Show started in like a minute or so. Once people trickle in. All right, we're officially live now. Let's give people a minute to get in. Let's see here.
Is there any way to turn my voice up? In the recording, it always sounds a little low. Or is that on my end?
That's on your end. You'll have to turn your own volume up.
Well, no, because when I watch through YouTube, I'm saying, comparatively to everyone else's, it seems like... Am I far from my mic? Maybe it's me, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's on your end, dude.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's even a way to even control them.
You can turn up your gain a little bit on your mic. There looks like a little gain volume.
I did that a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Once it's been like a minute or so, we'll get started. How's everybody been? How's it been your week gone?
Good. Good.
Yeah. Honestly, pretty solid week. I've got it's been a very easy work week. So I've just been kind of doing SharePoint cleanup and fun, boring projects like that, and trying to keep myself occupied. But I've been trying to work out. I've been doing cardio in the morning and then lifting weights in the afternoon. And that's going about as well as you'd expect when that's a new habit you're trying to form. So, I'm really sore everywhere, but that's great. That's good.
Yeah. Are you feeling like you're getting back into that routine, or is it still a slog to get in?
So I've been running 1 2/3 miles every other day.
Okay.
That's going pretty okay. And then I've been throwing in a little bit of bike riding or just really long, hour and a half walks. And I think those are all generally fine. The weightlifting is a little disheartening because it's been so long since I actually lifted weights that I feel like I'm just starting completely over. But the weights are smaller and I'm struggling to get back into the swing of things, and I'm doing it on my own. I don't have a buddy at the gym. But the one saving grace is that I live on the same block as my office building, and even though I'm not going into the office, the building's gym opened, and it's a semi-complete gym with a squat rack and a full dumbbell set and everything, which is really fantastic. Because at home I've got one pair of quasi-adjustable dumbbells and a yoga mat, and that's about it. So that's a big improvement.
That's good. It's good. I got to get back into a workout routine myself, but it's summer, and so I know that's not going to happen because Texas heat. So I know I'm not going to do shit.
I'm not looking forward to a couple months from now when it's because DC gets really hot, but the thing that bugs me is the humidity. Because I come from Wisconsin, which is really dry.
Right.
And even though I've been here 4 years now, I'll never get used to the humidity here. It's just absurd.
I hear that, man.
It's not called the swamp for no reason,
What about you, Mateo? How's things going on your end, dude?
Pretty good. I'm getting fucked by spy puts, but that's about it.
You should have put those those AMC calls.
I sold 15 shares of AMC today, and I still have 30 left.
I trade with people, and they're like, "Oh man," talking about how great of an idea it was, and all I tell them is you didn't know this was gonna happen. If I win a lottery, yeah.
No,
I mean, I look at the Gex charts. I see the gamma squeeze that's possible. I still don't think that it's gonna get pushed up there, and sometimes it does for whatever weird reason.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, but that shit's basically cryptocurrency. It's trading so far from fundamentals that it might as well just be a crypto in itself.
Well, to be fair, AMC at one point was
AMC
so
is a little
low
different.
that it was because AMC is a good company with solid fundamentals that was especially affected by the pandemic.
I don't know. It was about to go bankrupt. What saved it from bankruptcy was this huge stock run that just happened in January because they were able to issue a whole bunch of new shares for a retarded price. What was it up to back during the first
I think it was 28.
It was
just
it was.
So
It
I've
was
said
massive.
Just so I've said it, Chase doesn't like that word, but you're not wrong, and it is the term that Wall Street uses.
Yeah, but okay, it was Republican. How's that? Chase likes that one, but you know what I was saying?
Oh, say the R word. That's what I'm going to think from now.
I got an R word for you, Republican. No, but what was I saying? Oh, they issued a ton of new shares for a ridiculous price, and that's awesome for them. I mean, if you're a company during a short squeeze like that, that's what you do. Like, if your price is just unreasonably high, start selling new shares. Like, what the hell? Especially because it stops.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's actually what saved them. So now their fundamentals are slightly better because I think they're in a position where they actually didn't even have to sell new shares. They actually canceled a sale, so they probably have a future because of the whole short squeeze. But before that, they were definitely going bankrupt.
Nah,
That's why so many people shorted it. It was just such a horror. I mean, the pandemic really put the nail in the coffin.
For sure. We'll get into talking about that more, I'm sure. Sean, man, glad you could join us. Your nerd walls in the background. That's always good. How you've been, man? How's your week going?
Recovering from my overnight shift last night.
Was it a
But
split?
other than that, pretty good. I went to the mountains this past weekend with the girlfriend. Had a good time. Saw some good scenery.
Nice.
Can you please present your shirt to us?
Yeah,
Oh,
what is it?
It's my new Kirby.
Oh, it's Kirby.
He's eating
Oh,
everything.
okay. Hold on. Let me. There we go.
It's the Curbs. I love
Nice.
Kirby, man. I got Kirby everywhere.
You got to
Such
get
a
a
good
Kirby
name.
vacuum.
I'm sure it exists.
It probably does, especially
All right. Well, everybody, welcome again to an. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't ask. Art, I didn't ask you, did I?
Yeah, I was just
got-
like, wow, just
I'm all right.
get the hell out of here.
I wasn't going to
You
talk
have the
about
same
myself,
art in the background. We don't care anymore.
Right. Yeah, you guys handled the
All right,
important
what's
stuff.
going on?
And you didn't give us an update either. So
I didn't. Yeah. So, but go give us an update, Art.
okay, so just to frame, you guys have probably heard how insane the real estate market is. So I submitted
Correct.
3 offers today for on different properties that are basically like off market but open to selling. And you talk to people and you figure out kind of what they want, or you have an idea. So when people are not motivated in this kind of market where everyone's just scrambling for inventory, I'm like, look, like to get these guys' attention, we're gonna have to come in high, like high. So we came in on all 3 offers, an average of about, let's call it $150,000 over asking. First 2 rejected, not even a counter. Just nah, you're not even close. I'm like, oh, okay, not even a counter, not even gonna, nope, just that we're that far off. Good to know. The other guy's like, I'll sleep on it. I'm like, okay, that one's almost 200,000 over what your place is worth, but cool, yeah, go take a nap. Sure.
It's like
No
all
rush.
cash. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, Chinese buyers. So I mean, they're
No, okay.
they're ready to
What
knock it out of the
Are
park.
you? What market are you in?
I work in a luxury coastal market. In Orange
I
County,
just,
so
Hassan Piker talked about what he was trying to buy a house the other day and put in an offer like above asking price and was the only offer and still got rejected.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm like, there's something absurd is happening right now. Now is just not the time to buy a house.
there's this is stuff that's off market because the stuff that's on the market, it's a ridiculous knife fight. So you've heard of it's like the central like Irvine. I had these clients. We were putting in offers, and in that market where there's closer to like $1 million, which is, I guess livable. You were seeing 20, 30
That's
offers.
such a sentence.
I mean, it was a massacre. Like we didn't even get countered any. Like out of probably like 8 or 9 offers we wrote with these people, we didn't even not even a reply other than they want someone else. Like no counters, no nothing. Just getting blown the hell out. These are perfectly qualified, like young couple, but like killer jobs, plenty of money to put down. Like in any other market, they'd be fine. They just get something. We were looking at it and we're like the places that were closing in Irvine, even at that market, were, I think we're looking at an average of $50,000 to $60,000 over asking, and this is like just brutal all cash offers, just people hammering each other, and and out here, like actually like on the water. I mean, I don't even know what's happening anymore. I mean, it's just unreal. Like the people who are trying to sell are just sky high, and full price offers are coming in that are just not even getting looked at. I'm like, it's a full price offer. Like they're like, well, yeah, we want you to bid up. Like what? What? That's not how this works. It is just so insane right now that you have people who are just sitting back and just like, I don't even know what to do anymore. Like it's just, what do you do when money stops working? Like you just can't get their attention.
I don't know. Maybe
Maybe we should talk about inflation. What do you think?
Maybe we should talk about inflation a little bit. We'll get into that. Because you insisted, I'll give my update. Got my second shot today. Moderna. So I'm going all right. Not feeling any sick or anything. I have a headache, but that's about it. Thanks for the follow. Danabo. Nice. Thanks, man.
I think it's Dane Abo.
Danabo. Sorry. Well, thank you for that. But yeah, so that's basically doing shit in Power BI, working, whatever. So yeah, that's my update. Yeah, nothing new, too much going on. Gonna go take a little vacation next month, but yeah. So here we go.
That's
But
exciting.
I think we can get started now that it's been a couple of minutes. So welcome again, everybody, to an exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I'm your host and moderator, Cypher. And today I am joined by the ever-lovable Art Black.
Howdy,
Mateo de Gaulle, our resident curmudgeon.
Hey, internet.
Chase Mitchell, always glad to have you here. Very smart guy. Welcome back.
Super glad to be here. Not actually smart.
And Sean Solo. Sean, how you been? How's it going, dude? How's the nerd wall? Can't hear you, dude. You're muted. I'll unmute you. I can't unmute you. You're muted on your end.
I'm good.
There you
Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
The wall is good. I'm good.
And this is the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. If this is your first time joining us, the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup is a weekly show that the Crowdsourced Politics podcast crew and guests have put together for your all's entertainment and for us to cover the news with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. If this is your first introduction to Crowdsourced Politics, we are a funky little debate community on Facebook that gave birth to a podcast and are doing other ventures such as Crowdsourced Tribune, which is a budding media company / not-for-profit. So we, generally speaking, try to publish 2 episodes a month across all podcast streaming services and do this weekly where we interact with our fans and anybody that might happen to come by to answer questions about the news that was from the Thursday before to the current Thursday. So that is us. If you do want to debate and chill out, go ahead and join our Discord. Please join Discord. You can find the links in the links below or above, depending on where you're viewing this at. And if you do Facebook, go ahead and join the Facebook debate community at Tribune Commons. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Well, prior to officially starting the episode, we talked a little bit about inflation, some gamma squeezes from AMC, and that sort of thing. So I think that is a great topic to go ahead and start off with. What's going on with inflation? Why are people talking about it? Is it actually happening? Is it anything to worry about? What are your guys' thoughts?
I'm dying to know what the rest of you guys think. I have some thoughts, but I'm dying to know what everyone else thinks.
It's happening. We don't know if it's a problem. And that's about it so far.
I think that's actually the fairest assessment anybody can give on this right now. We should get revised numbers tomorrow. The Fed is to publish revised numbers for both the core inflation, the PCE and the PCI inflation indexes. So we should get some numbers there. We've heard Larry Summers warn Biden about the infrastructure bill to causing more inflation. And people already talked about, like, we're seeing house prices skyrocket. We're seeing asset inflation in general. So maybe this is something to worry about. Maybe it's not. Sean, what are your thoughts on it, dude? Think it's something?
I think it is hitting certain sectors heavier than others that could be cause for concern. But I think most of it is just overblown hype. I mean, it's a thing, but is it a real problem? Probably not.
Gotcha. What about you, Art? Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of inclined to agree. Like, we had an issue a year ago where the economy basically froze up and we had fears of deflation. And now we kind of have the accordion snapping back, where people that were kind of constricted before are now out spending money. They're kind of, it may be a kind of a self-reinforcing loop at this point, but I don't know that it's a fundamental problem. I think it's just a reaction to pandemic problem, and it just feels more significant than it is. Kind of to dovetail what I was talking about earlier, because there's limited inventory right now for houses. I've just been calling around, talking to owners, saying of like, hey, like, if we can bring you a crazy offer, like, what would work for you? And I talked to this one guy who his family's from Argentina, and he goes, you may not know this, you're very young, but we had the inflation back then. And he tells me this long story of how worthless all their money was. And the punchline was, is that in times like that, the only thing that matters are assets. So he's like, yeah, we could sell the beach house, but then what would we do with the money? Like, we just had to buy some other, overpriced stuff. He goes, it seems like I should just hold on to it for now and kind of see how this plays out. And I'm like, I honestly can't argue with that logic. It does make a lot of sense. I don't think that what's going on is a fundamental problem. I think it's just like I said before, a reaction to the pandemic. But I certainly can understand how some people would want to play it safe and look at it and say,
For sure.
why would I want to convert this asset into dollars that might not matter, if inflation takes off? I mean, I'd need to go from asset to asset, which people often do. So that's a nice pitch too. But
No, I think that's a very fair point. Chase, are you ready to give your thoughts on?
I think that everyone, if we combine everything that everyone has said, it kind of sums up my opinion and my anecdotal / factual interpretation of what is happening, which is if you look at certain things. So our entire economy is based off of companies forecasting what they think is demand is going to be and trying to meet that demand. And like almost every company has been operating on like a just-in-time basis where they're getting things in their supply chain exactly at the right moment to produce the amount that they predict that's going to happen. And if you want like an interesting microcosm as to what's happening right now, look at graphics cards, because those guys did a horrible job at predicting demand. And now you can't buy a graphics card literally anywhere. Well, now that's happening with a bunch of other things. So I just booked a flight to go home to Wisconsin. Pre-pandemic, there was flights back to Wisconsin out of DCA every single evening on Southwest. Southwest hasn't brought back those flights yet, even though now demand is higher than it was pre-pandemic. So we've got a supply-demand mismatch where the suppliers are way, way, way behind the sudden increase in demand. And this is happening in a whole bunch of things. But it's not happening across every single product. So if you look at milk prices and other things and a lot of like consumer staples, they're really pretty stable, maybe going up a little bit. If you look at the whole CPI and annualize it, yeah, we're seeing like 2.9% inflation, but that's really likely due to like this amalgamation of weird factors that we haven't experienced before. So I'm really not super worried about it, because I think as all of these manufacturers start getting back to the reality and meeting this present like demand spike, and make no bones about it, everyone that I know is spending money right now. I've got like 3 vacations planned in the next 2 months. Like, and this is not exclusive to me. Everyone I know is spending money right now. Everyone I know is buying stuff. People have been cooped up for a year. They want to get out and spend money. They want to travel. They want to buy stuff. They haven't had a reason to buy clothes for a year. Like, there is a lot of pent up demand for all kinds of things. And there's shortages, like people are struggling to hire because people are also like not back to their normal routine yet. They don't have childcare set up. They don't have, they aren't ready to get back to the way things were. So we're in a very weird time. And I think people are trying to apply like traditional economic analysis at a time when we are not in a traditional time at all. That's where I'm at.
That's a very good point, honestly, Chase. I do think that what we are partly seeing here, and it's something that you've mentioned, is that we're seeing a group of people, especially those of us that can work from home, that are middle class to upper middle class, that had office jobs that already paid well, either getting paid more, or not, but still being able to maintain their income while drastically reducing the amount of things they spend money on. Going out to eat, everybody, lots of people cut that out from their budget entirely, right? Or extremely reduced it, right? You don't have people going out to like bars anymore. You don't have people going out to game clubs. People are spending more time at home. So they're sitting on this cash that would normally be spending weekly, and it's just accumulating. Well, what are you going to do with it, right? You're going to buy assets. So that's what a lot of people, upper middle class people did with the first stimulus check. They went and bought stock. And so the stock market increased. And then you have these people that are like, well, I can't live in an apartment anymore like I've been doing, because I need the space for an office, because I can't work from home in this tiny apartment with my girlfriend or fiance or wife, whatever partner. and needing a bigger space. So they end up going to buy a house. And that's going to drive the market up. People that would normally wait maybe a year or 2, 3 are now coming into the market to buy these things up. And then there's also the issue of, let's say, gas. As Chase was saying, gas prices are up, but that's partly because demand is up while production has been cut to meet demand from COVID. And OPEC has not agreed to increase gas production. They have no incentive to do it right now. They're able to make up money that was lost during the the shutdown. Why? So, in my opinion, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing with this artificial decrease in production is being kept there for a little bit of time in order to recoup some of the losses from the year prior.
I do want to point out that gas prices, I can't remember in the CPI if gas is even included in the bundle.
It is.
It is? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of weird because actually I tend to think of gas as counter-inflationary because the price of gas, it does adjust people's gas usage habits, but not that much. People tend to use a fairly consistent amount of gasoline. It tends to be very cyclical. People don't change their habits that much as a result of gas prices. Now, when it's dramatic, yeah, but it actually tends to, if gas prices go up, people's spending tends to change in other things. I think right now, it just barely makes a difference because, like you said, people just haven't spent money for a year. And I always want to acknowledge there are certainly people who lost their jobs and are struggling financially, but there are a lot of people that are not in that boat. And those are the kind of people that are buying houses and stocks and et cetera, like you highlighted.
Yep. Mateo, you said something. What was it?
There's two different measures of inflation. There's core and headline. Core counts gas and food, which is volatile, like Chase said.
Yep.
Headline is what includes it, and then the core kind of cuts that out because, like Chase mentioned, it's pretty noisy. It goes up and down pretty violently at times.
And it's using, and if I'm not mistaken, Mateo, please correct me like right away if I'm wrong, but the inflation number that's being reported now is the PCI, not the core.
The CPI?
The CPI, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. So it was core and headline, I think. Or it might have been just core. I can't remember. But what happened today was the PCE. Are you talking about today, or are you asking about...
I mean, in general, I know that one is typically higher than the other, and that one is the one that economists would like the Labor Department to move to.
Probably PCE then.
Yeah. So the PCE doesn't include gas, and so one of those other... Double check us on this.
Yeah, I think
obviously.
there's also headline and core with the PCE as well, but I'm not sure, so I will look it up.
Yeah, I read about it, and so
yeah, core PCE.
Also, oil.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. It's an inflation measure.
Yeah,
I just know.
So
never mind.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to be useless information. I was going to say PCE uses more goods and services, or more services than CPI, but it was irrelevant.
But the whole thing with that is that if you cut out if you can reduce the noise in that, I was reading a Forbes article, basically taking out the highest outlier and the lowest outlier, taking those out and to like, it's called smoothing the data to account for outliers, account for noise. It drops by like a percentage point. Like the last month's April's inflation drops by 1%. So you're looking at a 3.2 or 3.1% inflation versus the 4.1.2 inflation that was reported. And so these are things that people should take into account, because we had gas prices fall off a cliff in April basically of last year, and the prices right before were around what they are now. So it's just filling that hole. Art, you had a video you would want me to play. I am going to pull it up.
It's about the state of real estate, and it's brief, but it's amazing. This is what we're all going through right now.
Let me go ahead and share the screen. Tab, share audio, and that.
They use a metaphor, but you'll pick it up real quick.
Is that Apple for sale? Yeah, we're about to put it on sale right now, actually. Well, I'm in the market, so tell me about your Apple. Why should I buy it? Nice try. Okay, people, here's how this is going to work. I have an apple here. The highest bidder's going home with this. I want all bids in the next 2 minutes, then we're closing it. Bidding starts at $5.
Feeling pretty confident there, huh? I mean, don't you think?
$10.
You said starting at 5.
15. Is this a new apple? Yeah, just listed. I'm pre-qualified. I'll pay cash. I got cash. 20, 30, 40. No, just make it 45.
Is it even worth that?
50. I don't know. Please, this is the 8th apple I've ever buy.
Could I get up close?
Nope, it's an apple. Nope, you want it or you don't. I'll take it for 100.
What? I'm from California. It's the cheapest apple I've ever seen.
20.
Why did I do that? Why? I don't.
That was great. Thank you,
Wow.
Art, for that share.
Anyway, that's literally how it is right now. It's off the rails.
And it's going like that in Austin as well. So it's pretty bananas.
What's funny is a lot of places that people are moving to because it's cheaper. Is for instance, I have a brother that moved to Boise. They have like jobs that they work from San Francisco, but they can telecommute or whatever. So they are just like, well, let's just take the money across the border. And yeah, that market's like absolutely skyrocketing. Like stuff that was selling for like 300,000 a year ago is now going for like 450. I mean, it's just it's nuts. It's just even the escape routes are getting clogged.
Well, they're not going far enough, right? So nobody wants to move to.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're kind of right. And a lot of people who are leaving California go to Texas are all going to the same places, and those are just like, the Three Stooges all going through the same door at once. Just that's an old
California's
reference,
coming to
but
Austin, turning it into Cala, Texas, and then they're going to Arizona.
I'd say it's gonna be bright blue in like a week, like the rate of people people are leaving. It's nuts.
Yeah,
Well-
I mean, I am curious. You would think that in this era of telecommuting seeming to, like, everyone woke up and suddenly telecommuting was a great option. You'd think that in this era that the housing pressure in cities would be downward. But it just doesn't seem to be that that's what's happening, because it turns out people like to live in cities.
Yep.
Well, I think that would be
think
true
right.
if there was a constant amount of humans. But the thing is that we're multiplying, and they only made so much. Like
Well, yeah,
property
because
in downtown
Biden just
cities.
opened the borders and lets anybody in.
I think a lot of people miss that we could make new cities, guys. Let's do it.
Oh,
Well, that's
no,
partly what's kind of happening. But go ahead, Art.
No, I agree, but in California we can't because we have the environmental restrictions, so we can't build
Right.
new things, and we have it's just a weird diabolical mix, that we have as far as well-meaning things that don't work out well, and then kind of just things that are just bad on their own. But yeah, it's a mess. It's just it's an absolute mess. But you're right. If you go out far enough, presumably, like kind of building new cities, like, you would normally think of Boise as like a kind of a cosmopolitan hub, but you're getting a lot of, Californians that are trying to recreate like California, nearby. And people up in like Oregon and Seattle, or, they've been complaining about that forever, about, Californians that are, fleeing out, but we're kind of reaching into redder and redder states now, with our export of Californians and turning cities you wouldn't normally think of into more like what we left behind. So
The
to speak.
unwashed masses are coming for my guns.
Yeah,
Cosmopolitan hub. I mean, Boise just shoots right to the top of mind when I think of cosmopolitan hub.
It really does. But things are changing with demographics is destiny, so to speak. So you get enough Californians anywhere, it turns into little California.
Love it. We can get California pizza everywhere. But yeah, I don't really care for it either. It's just one. But I think it was Sean saying that that people, you would think that the house prices would go down, right? Because we get left the people would want to move like further out or whatever. Isn't this something that we debated a lot with people in our community? Where they were swearing up and down they would move to like these tiny cities and just live the rural lifestyle.
Oh, every Republican in California has been saying that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to like bear out, but people have been saying it.
You get guys like Tim Pool and or even Joe Rogan, or a lot of the guys who used to be out here in California or in bigger cities that have, some of those guys are heading to Texas. So they are getting a little bit off the grid, especially if you're loaded. why not? But for a lot of people, just for work reasons, many people can do Zoom meetings and kind of make that work. But for a lot of people in most industries, there is a certain amount of face-to-face that's required.
Yeah, that's true. There was I think it was a couple of months ago, there was an NPR program that was talking about people moving to some ski town and driving up the prices there because of the work remote and being able to be outside and do stuff. So,
What ski town didn't already have absurd real estate prices?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's probably I don't recall which area it was in, but I just know that they didn't have it wasn't like Aspen. Basically, it was.
Well, I was gonna say, no matter how bad it is, it can always get worse.
My brother lived in Vail for a year during his fellowship, so Vail is not a place that like normal people live. So
right.
I've seen how crazy it can be, but yeah, Denver's. I just had a couple of friends move out to Denver, and I was like, "Are you sure?" Because Denver is like every millennial wants to live in Denver all of a sudden, and like I know they have great breakfast places, but come on.
I saw it on Instagram. Some girl took her butt along a mountainside, and it just spoke to me. I have to move out there.
It actually, I keep seeing these lists that are like top 100 cities to live, and it's always at the top 3 or something. It's always up there.
Yeah. We do have a comment coming in from Twitch from Rotten Pizza saying Whole Foods, once they come in, it's a real place.
Soho Sopa.
Once they come in,
Yeah.
Once they come in, it's a real place, meaning that your neighborhood is rapidly gentrifying.
Yes. And then you see the stereotypical latte liberal with the Black Lives Matter sign as they're shoving everybody out.
Now that's an interesting way of framing it. Are we gentrifying Texas? Like, is this what's happening here?
Not well, not gender.
I mean, this about guys.
Like
Dallas,
Austin?
Dallas and Austin have already been gentrified. Like I live on the east side of Austin, and that used to be the historical black area of Austin, and it's basically already going, like it's gone. Like,
I mean, it's not rednecks gentrifying these places, so
no, it's not. It's
it's always the people who hate gentrification. Like this is the worst thing ever. As they're like in their like new house,
this is what I could afford. Like, okay,
that's all I could afford. Well, that's the whole fucking point. It's just skin color is all you see, and that's why you think it's a problem now.
Well, it's complicated. Like when I moved to DC,
Fair.
I moved into a historically black neighborhood. Like you ask anybody, it's a historically black neighborhood. Go. And it was because I was living with 4 other people. It was it was the only place I could afford. But like while I lived there, an organic grocery store was built, a TJ Maxx was built, a luxury apartment building was built, and a Target was going up by the time I moved out of the neighborhood. So guaranteed. Yeah, well, but guaranteed within a year or two, I wouldn't have been able to afford to live in that neighborhood, much less all of the people who'd lived there for decades, generations. Like when I say like
generations,
some of the families in that neighborhood had been there for literally generations, and they won't be able to afford to live there in the near future in LA. So it's like it's a problem, but it's like, how do you solve that problem? I guess like some people are like, well, I don't feel bad for them because if they own their house, they can just sell it and make a bunch of money. But a lot of them are renting, in which case they're just being forced to move.
Yeah, there's rent control, but there's only so much you could do.
Yeah,
I mean, it's in a limited space and it's high demand. There's really little you could do besides just like artificially keeping prices down, which will get rid of stewardship,
or
maybe not.
Build more. Yimbys.
Yeah, well,
Yimbys and night.
Municipalities should build housing. I think like that would it would bring down the market prices of the private market, and it would also provide houses. It's one of the least intrusive ways to solve the problem, but I don't know. It doesn't seem...
Oh, you're 100%. I get so frustrated living in DC because every single new apartment building that goes up, every single one is a luxury apartment building. I have yet to see, since I've lived here, any new buildings going up that are going to provide non-luxury housing. And why? Because those guys can be at like 50 or 60% capacity and turn more of a profit than a affordable housing unit that, not even affordable, just non-luxury unit that is at 100% capacity. Like that's the reality.
No, that's very true.
How do you fix that economic incentive? You don't unless you have
I'm all
raise capital gains taxes.
I'm all for markets and everything, but at the same time, the public sector has jobs it should do too for the people. Like if housing can't be met by the private sector, well then add housing to fill the gap.
The issue with building low-cost housing is that it's low cost, so people will buy it and then they'll flip it and they'll make it nice,
Well,
and then you get rich people buy it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that in our current structure, there's a high incentive for people to come in and turn things into luxury units where, like half the stuff that I sell is like vacant. Like people just buy it and then they maybe come to town for like a month and then it just sits here empty. I mean, what do you do with that? Like in the current structure, it pencils out. Like they don't care. So, and you have like homeless people camped out in front of these empty houses down at the beach. So,
yep. And this is you talked about holding onto an asset before. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Louis Rossman. He's a MacBook repair guy on YouTube, but he has talked quite a bit about New York real estate because he was just looking for an office and observed during COVID that there were places that were empty for in sometimes years. Like the last time he was looking for a new office space, he was finding some of the same places were still empty because people are just hanging on to the real estate. They're going up in value. Even if they're empty, they're still not losing money. And they have no incentive to lower the rent prices because that could apply downward pressure on all of the other properties that they manage and own.
I bet they're losing a ton of money in taxes and all sorts of everything. It's not just like you hold on to it and then you sell it when you want.
You can write a lot of those losses off though.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's
losses?
these weird they're losses because they're purposely keeping them off, keeping people out until they can get the amount of money they want. And since you can write off a lot of those losses, you end up having an issue.
The government of New York hasn't gotten around that.
No,
it's New York. It's not
federal.
like they have a huge Republican.
It's federal too. That's the problem. Okay. It's a confluence of both federal and local tax incentives.
New York's also a little bit special because they have.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not an expert on this. My understanding is that there are a ton of foreign investors who use shell companies to buy real estate in New York to hold on to money, especially people from foreign countries who want to get their money out of their country.
Yes.
So there's a lot of real estate in New York that really they don't even have interest in renting. They just want an asset hold. And New York real estate is one of the most consistent ways to hold value in a physical way that protects your money. And so New York's kind of weird like that.
Would adjusting SALT deduction caps fix any of this?
No, it's separate.
Oh.
I think it's separate.
Funny.
No. I mean, it would having that extra tax on there might have some, or not extra tax, but whatever, might have some effect. But it's a lot of separate things. So if you have a real estate company and you're not selling your real estate and you're dumping money into it to improve it, and you're not able to sell it, then you can write off the loss, right?
Can you write off the taxes though?
Yeah, and you can write off You can write off some of the taxes, for the business.
But how much? Because that struck me when I said that earlier, and you guys you could write that. Yeah. Are taxes losses?
Well, not the taxes per se, but let's say, somewhere in like California where we have Prop 13, you're not actually paying a lot of taxes, so it's basically pegged at a quarter or so of the sale price from whenever you did it. So if you did it, 20 years ago, then your taxes are just nothing. So, but depending on where you are, other places have much higher taxes. So, I couldn't speak to other states.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous the amount of stuff you can do with this stuff. Like, honestly, the tax code needs to be overhauled. It needs to we need actual tax reform, not just gutting taxes on the wealthy, which is where Republicans.
We need our tax code isn't, especially around real estate. Our tax code doesn't incentivize the kind of behaviors that we want. Yes. We don't incentivize.
Now, when you say you're not talking about the donors to the parties. So it does certainly give them the policies that they want.
Lost Chase.
I was about to say, am I the only one seeing?
Not having a bunch of empty houses.
Oh, there he is.
Chase.
We as U.S. Americans.
It was a big long speech, and he just cut out.
I'm sorry, you froze up, Chase. Can you say again?
All I said was, when I say we, I mean we, U.S. Americans. What we writ large, the royal we. Well, the formerly royal we had a whole war about it. No royalty anymore. But we should be using tax law to disincentivize having a bunch of empty housing. And we should kind of like be forcing people to, if they're going to hang on to real estate and leave it vacant for a long time, they should be penalized for that.
Tobin tax, vacancy tax, do it. Land value added tax, let's do it. Do all the things.
As for salt deductions, I'm all for salt deductions. I've got high blood pressure, so I need more of a salt deduction.
We've got I want to get a couple of comments in here that we got from for some of our watchers, and so we have one from Rotten Pizza over on Twitch. They let landlords overcharge for crap properties through Section 8. Section 8 needs to be revamped. Waiting list years long in a lot of places, which is true. Section 8 housing within Houston, a ProPublica did it with I think the Texas Tribune.
Is it called Section 8 in Texas? Because Section 8 refers to Section 8 of the New York Constitution, right? That's where that term comes from.
It's what it's called for all of it because it's a federal program at this point.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Section 8 housing in Houston has a 5-year waiting list, and if you can't find a place that you can afford with that voucher or somebody to take that voucher, you lose it because of how long the waiting list is. So you have people that had been on the waiting list for 5-6 years, got it, couldn't find a place, lost their spot, and had to go back on the waiting list. So that's very true. Thank you, Rotten Pizza, for bringing it up. And then we have another comment, 2 comments coming in from YouTube. Maybe it's me. This happened to Cartersville, Georgia, where he grew up. It used to be a quiet small town, and now it's a burb of Atlanta. Still nice, yet irony rings. Wonder why we never talk about the burbs takes over. Poor people in those areas are pushed further out to the sticks, which is also true.
Because they're white.
I mean, it's partially some of that. Some of it's also that, people really don't care about poor people all that much. By and large, we all say that we do, but if it means getting between me and my bag, sorry, poor guy, you're gonna get pushed over to the side.
Just so I've on the fly fact check, it's Section 8 of the Housing Act of 1937. The New York Constitution thing predates that, but they are not. They're distinct. So It is Section 8 federally from the Housing Act of 1937.
There you go. I do want to say that one of the things that we had during the New Deal was the building of projects. And I'm not pro projects. I think concentrating poor people into very small areas is very bad. Has a lot of knock-on effects of increasing crime, of increasing or decreasing opportunities because everybody that is also poor. I prefer scatter plot housing. Shout out to Show Me a Hero on HBO. No, that is not an ad. It's just a really good docu-series that I like.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But so during the FDRs, they built a ton of affordable housing for people, and we haven't had that done really since. I mean, I guess you can kind of say the GI Bill helped with that a bit, but
yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's another thing we should talk about.
Another interesting thing about affordable housing is that if you don't have affordable housing and you live somewhere nice, you don't have any workers. So, people like having these nice areas and, they enjoy a certain standard of living, but, like, for instance, a lot of the other business owners that I know complain constantly about how it's harder and harder to get people to work for minimum wage, which dovetails into another conversation. But, if you're paying people so little that they can't afford to live in the areas that you need them to be to service those areas, then you're going to, you're basically creating a inherently dysfunctional system where you don't have the workers to operate a high-end economy that does need to be serviced. You need service personnel for in terms of like the service industry. So you need to have a mix of affordable housing near even very luxurious, wealthy areas, or else you can't get anything done.
We all need to be serviced. That's what I took away.
True.
I think we've kept booking. Okay, so I think we covered this inflation topic and dovetailed it into the real estate.
I just want to mention, just because we didn't actually talk about it, is the Fed. Their assessment is basically like, because the Fed has basically set their policies such that they want to maximize economic growth right now. They're looking at unemployment still being high, and they've basically come to the assessment we don't need to pull back on keeping the interest rates low and keeping our we don't need to pull that back yet, but they might start to talk about that in the near future. So, their analysis is probably a lot more intricate and complicated than ours. But if the Fed's not worried about inflation, then we probably shouldn't be.
No, I agree with that.
If this is still going in another 6, 8, 9 months, like that could be something. But I think that we really do need to give the economy a little time to readjust from COVID.
Yeah.
Once that happens, if we're still looking at problems, there may be more to it than it looked like at first. And we should certainly at least keep a very wary eye on it, just make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. And we shouldn't discount it. It might be masked by COVID, but it could be something a lot worse underneath. So we don't know that. We should be wary.
Yeah, the Fed even said that they're gonna. Sorry, the Fed even said they want to let it get a little hotter than they normally would have too. So it's like this is all goes according to plan at the same time. But I mean, it's possible it can get away from us. It has before. So
I think the Fed.
I don't think it will. But
right.
The Fed says diamond hands on those low rates.
I mean, they did say, I think earlier this week, that they would adjust the levers of interest rates in order to combat any sudden inflation that they were worried about. So
they're taking inflation to the moon.
They
like my AMC stocks. Hey-o!
They took some liquidity out of the market with reverse repos, which is like a collateral loan, but the opposite side of it or reversed. It's complicated and dumb. But so I mean, I think that they're thinking about it. That's like the new term you're going to hear on cable news is they're thinking about it, or they're thinking about talking about it, because that's like how Fed speak works. It's these weird subtleties. But I don't know. I don't want to say like they have a straight control on it, because at the same time they have like a vested interest in running inflation pretty high. They even said like they're going to target like minority groups too now, which means if minority groups make less and they're less employed, you're going to let general inflation run a lot hotter than it even would if you were just saying let's run it hot, because if you're waiting for it to catch up to them in their labor markets. Right. So I could see them, because we haven't really done this, I could see it running out of control, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, I see it as a possibility. I just don't think... I'm not sounding any alarm or anything. But I don't want to just be like, no, hell no, this is nothing. Even though inflation is a lot easier to control than deflation, so this is nowhere near as scary as it would be if we had deflation. So if I had to pick, I would pick inflation.
Yep.
I don't know, I want to be super neutral on it. That's all I'm trying to say.
Spoken like a true Fed follower. But that's my takeaway too. I'm not super concerned about it. Call me in like 2 or 3 months. Honestly, like we're filling a giant hole that's going to cause some inflation right there. So I'm not terribly worried. But I think we covered this topic pretty extensively, so we should talk about some other stuff. On the agenda today is some. Let me go back to my little channel so I'll make sure that I say it. So we have some. Let's see. Should we talk about infrastructure? That dovetails pretty well. We got the Belarus journalist that got intercepted, and Republican governors across the U.S. cutting off additional unemployment aid. What's the take? Which one?
I'm down for any of these. I feel like the unemployment thing we could probably get through pretty quickly, and it kind of ties into what we were just talking about.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay, let's do the unemployment. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So our unemployment numbers are still pretty high. We have 61% of American adults having received at least one vaccination. I think it's over 50% are fully vaccinated at this point. Struggling to remember. The numbers are really good, suffice it to say. And you've got a number of states that are no longer accepting the federally subsidized benefits that were augmenting the additional $300 of unemployment. I'm actually kind of okay with this for a couple of reasons. Number one, the reason that it was put in place was to encourage people to stay home if they wanted to or needed to. You know, if people couldn't get out and work, or, you know, they wanted to stay home and not work to protect themselves health-wise, it was meant to do that. That is increasingly no longer necessary. And this is also going to provide kind of a natural experiment where we're actually going to be able to analyze the effects of unemployment econometrically and see what is the actual effect when certain states have this and certain states don't. And I really love being able to have that kind of economic analysis where we haven't in the past. It's kind of the reason, one of the hypothetical reasons why we have this, federalized republic system where we've got all this competition between states who are trying different things. We can find out what the outcome is going to be. And given some of the long-term things that we're talking about for unemployment, universal basic income, that kind of data I think is going to be useful. So I don't really blame governors for doing it at this point. I'm okay with it, which is maybe a take that not everyone likes.
So just for vaccination rates, 163.9 million people, just shy of 50% of the population, have had at least one dose, and 130.6 million, which is about 40% of the population, are fully vaccinated. But that's over half of all adults. So not taking children into account, we're
Right.
Making good progress.
We're not there to herd immunity yet. Primarily, it seems due to children not being vaccinated yet. But we are, like Art said, we are doing really well. To Chase's point about the unemployment and not really caring, I get it, but I don't necessarily agree. And that's specifically because I don't think states should be allowed to play with the numbers as much as they're allowed to. I'm not really a huge fan of block grants because a lot of states will do things that aren't meant to be done with these things, but the block grants don't have much in the way of oversight for them. And while each state does have its own kind of economics going along with it, I don't like their ability to do that. There's some states that have such low, like the minimum that you can get for employment is like $50 a week, and then the maximum is like $250. Like there's some ridiculous numbers out there that states set for their unemployment insurance that I just think it's not really right to do. And so in those states, these are the same states that are cutting the 300, and so you're taking somebody that might be getting maybe $500 or not 500, like $500 total from the federal government or lower from the federal government, and then being basically put to the winds because not every state also has the same employment numbers going. So I don't know. It's I don't know. What's your thought, Mateo?
I'm kind of neutral on it. I mean,
is that your theme of the day, neutrality?
I guess so. I was going to say something.
You're always neutral, dude.
Well, I lost so much money today that I'm just, there's no more dopamine and norepinephrine up there, so I'm just kind of out. No, I mean, there's an argument that paying people more than they otherwise would make to do absolutely nothing is enticing compared to, just whatever job they normally had that paid less than that. But at the same time, there is a risk to holding off to the last end because, as you see now, there are companies raising their wages. They're also they're trying to do something a little more temporary by offering bonuses because you raise the wage, that's forever. You give them a bonus, that's just for a couple months.
Get a free iPhone.
Well, no, they're giving out some cash bonuses and shit now too.
Yeah, I know. That's just one of the signs I saw. But go on, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's also got a good effect there because you're getting some wage inflation, and that's kind of what we are looking for. We've been looking for since like 2008. So there's a lot of angles I can see that are good. But if let's say you have a struggling labor market, like the labor market's really tight, and like Chase said, like it was no mystery that these were designed to keep people home. So if you're in a state or a municipality where you need these workers, and let's say the vaccination rate is, I don't know, whatever, I'm not even sure what the CDC says is the good rate, but if it's there, you have an incentive to kind of cut back on that unemployment.
Yeah. No, I can agree. I can agree with that to an extent. I just don't like states having the ability to mess with it so much, like they can deny that aid. I don't know. It's just one of those things.
Government kind of like reach them more directly if they wanted to. I feel like that would bypass a lot of.
I don't think so with the way that the unemployment insurance program is set up, but I'm not entirely sure.
I'm
not entirely sure.
Maybe, hopefully. So, I don't know.
The federal government, well, it would require new legislation.
Yeah,
the
that's the
federal
thing,
government
too.
could effectively do a UBI, like instead of doing the, we got those COVID relief payments or we got cash payments. The federal government could do a UBI. I'm not sure about the legality of doing it specifically to target unemployed people, because that may run afoul of the Constitution. But
I see what you're saying.
that is something that is for people who are way smarter than I am to figure out.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just a question of passing legislation, which we don't do anymore in America. So if we can't do it through reconciliation, it ain't going to happen.
Which I think leads us.
That's a great segue. We're gonna go right into infrastructure, everybody. Yeehaw! So I think we did cover the unemployment cuts to the various states that are happening. These are all Republican states, but this does do a good segue to talk about the infrastructure bill. To give a little bit of clarity for people that might not be paying attention to news as closely as us, hence your being here. The Republicans have, since their initial proposal of I believe it was like $400 billion being spent on infrastructure, have raised it to $928 billion. After Biden had lowered it from 2.1 trillion to, I believe, 1.7. Lowers. Get the number correct. Let's see. Yeah, I believe it was 1.7. Yep, 1.7. Lowered it to 1.7 from the 2.1. So there is that. Now, what does this say? Does this say that Republicans are actually willing to bring numbers up? Because it looks like a pretty good face on the surface. The Biden White House had announced today that they themselves are still reviewing the plan because it just came out. I think it was late last night. So generally not enough time to actually view it. And so, yeah, what are you guys' thoughts about the back and forth on this negotiation? Should we be including the things that are in the Biden plan as infrastructure, or should those be separate items? What's your take?
There was a point early on in COVID where you're like, well, I mean, surely Trump's going to do something, right? Like, I know that he's trying to pretend this isn't happening, but, you think he's not just going to let this go. Like, this was going to destroy his presidency. And then, like, the longer things went, and you even had that one point where they were thinking about doing like a stimulus right before the election, like free money. And you're like, well, surely he's going to do something. He doesn't want to lose the election. All he has to do is do anything, like just wave your arms and make something like anything, like just stop just sitting there doing nothing. And yet Trump, like a champ, did nothing as hard as he could and lost the election. And you're like, wow, I guess he really was going to do nothing. That's amazing. And now Biden's doing the same thing. He's just sitting there in the White House, just like, well, we should really be bipartisan. And the Republicans obviously have not only no interest in being bipartisan, but they're fully incentivized to do nothing. But they win by doing nothing, and he loses. So he's like, I guess we'll just all do nothing. And maybe they'll change or something will happen, and then we will do things. But, certainly he's not going to do them on his own. So it's shocking to see like two presidents in a row just decide, you know what? I think nothing's the way to go. Let's just ride this out and just see where nothing takes us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. They are going to pass an infrastructure bill. I feel like if they don't, it's idiotic. I mean, that would be like having like infrastructure week every year and never passing an infrastructure bill, which is like the dumbest thing you could ever do.
Happened.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's the joke. That's the joke. Yeah, they're going to pass something. I know that some of the things in here Republicans are arguing are not infrastructure. They're arguing that paying for childcare is infrastructure. They're arguing that paying for preschool is infrastructure.
I feel like Democrats are saying the same thing too.
Well, some.
Like saying childcare is infrastructure. I feel like that's just almost like a Rorschach test of saying, I care about women. It's not infrastructure. It's important, and it should be something we beef up. But throwing that in an infrastructure bill, and we're like, oh, we need these bridges. It's insulting, I think. I mean, especially when people are just like, nah, man, that's infrastructure. I think you're not delegitimizing it if you're saying it's not infrastructure. I feel like a lot of people don't want to be caught downplaying the importance of these things, so they just want to include it.
It should be noted.
I would just argue it's not physical infrastructure. It's social infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
1 second though. Let me just break in real quick. So it's being billed as an infrastructure bill, but at the same time, it's called the American Jobs Act. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. But go ahead, Mateo.
That's true.
well, I think Chase, were you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, you could probably persuade me into calling it infrastructure too. I mean, that's not really going to be difficult, but you got a lot of like middle Democrats and definitely Republicans. I mean, even if Republicans wanted it to be infrastructure, there's a lot of incentive there to just pretend it's not.
Right.
Like you're going to have to define the word with them. Like, I mean, is that even still included? I thought Biden got rid of a lot of that stuff though.
Yeah, it's
Some of it
been
got
I'm
cut.
doubting myself now. I got to keep up on this stuff more.
No, the child care things are still included in it. I think the amount of money being dedicated to it has lessened, as well as full pre-K, fully funded pre-K, fully funded. I'm sorry, I'm blinking. Community colleges, that
And
sort
there's
of thing.
a
are
problem
being
too with like labeling this as infrastructure when like the common use of the word
right.
usually relates to things that are crumbling literally right now under our cars on our commute to work.
see, I think. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
I think, Chase, I'm probably about to say what you were about to say. I think ultimately there's sort of a new definition of infrastructure, like because there's so much new technology and things going on. Like we've got the internet, we've got electrical grids.
Well, I'd call that absolutely. That's
But my favorite part of the bill is the $37 billion that they're using to bolster the U.S. semiconductor industry.
Oh, that's so
Like
huge. Can we put a pin
semiconductor-
in that? Can we circle back to that?
I would
Yeah,
even call that
let's put it in and
infrastructure. I would
circle
call
back.
that national security even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's put a pin in that because I want to follow up on Mateo's thoughts
Good
first.
point.
But when I think about infrastructure, and I've thought about it this way for a long time, and I learned to think about it this way when I considered myself a conservative and a Republican, where I think of infrastructure as things that we invest in for long-term economic growth. So quality education, in my opinion, is part of American infrastructure because without quality education, the U.S. loses economically in the long term. Investing in things like childcare may not feel in your gut like infrastructure, but what it enables is for tons of, especially women, but really women and men, to go into the labor force. The single largest child care system that we have is the public school system. And that enables so many people to go and work in the economy that it's absolutely absurd. So I know that it's kind of a broad definition of infrastructure, and I understand that there's a difference between physical infrastructure, cables in the ground, bridges, roads, but the net effect of making sure our roads are good and making sure that people have access to education and childcare, I think that the net effects are kind of the same. And that's why I think that they're really should be viewed in the similar light.
I mean, they're definitely similarly important. Like I said, I'm not trying to downplay. I'm just trying to say it would be probably prudent to separate the two because this comes down to really the relativity of diction. Because like Democrats are like, we need infrastructure, and Republicans are like, hell yeah, and they're both saying two different things. Yeah. So in a pluralistic society, we kind of have to trim it down. And if this is really causing an outroar among not just the opponents who are, it's their job to oppose us, it's also people who are with us, kind of. Because I think what is it, Manchin? Who else is already speaking out against it? Cinema. Wait, she definitely.
I think she did.
There's a couple of them, and they're kind of stars too. It's weird, but well,
Manchin and Cinema they're the most moderate, so they're always in the limelight. In a 50-50 Senate, they're always going to be in the limelight.
True.
And good for them, God, Kirsten Cinema, I wish I could dress that good. That's all I want to say about Kirsten. And her name is not Kristen. You know who you are, everybody who keeps saying Kristen. It's not Kristen.
I wouldn't be surprised if I'm guilty
sorry.
of
that too. We do.
But
go ahead.
Looping back around to the semiconductor thing, like, I don't know, is that infrastructure? I don't care. It is a national security issue. We should absolutely have a thriving semiconductor industry in the United States. And if we ever ever want manufacturing to like be okay. To be clear, we manufacture more in the United States right now than at any point in history. But if we want more manufacturing jobs in the U.S., we need to bring more of that supply chain back, and you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, but this is a temporary issue with the microchips because they had to go into millions of vaccines. So we're just temporarily running low.
I'm just glad someone was willing to say it.
Damn it!
It's about time.
Damn
That's
it.
excellent, actually.
Oh my god!
Chase got out of his seat, everybody.
That was perfect.
I was so not expecting that. The end of that sentence.
I was expecting something so serious and real.
Well, because
Yeah,
this is a temporary, like, oh my god, just
Because it is temporary. That's what makes it so good. You're like, oh, okay, where's he going? And then it's like, the veins.
So to the temporary point and what Mateo brought up earlier about it being a defense issue, China has been playing fuck games with the semiconductors, and so we have that as an issue. And yeah, I don't know if this is something that's necessarily temporary, or if it's something that we should definitely throw money into. I think I lean towards the latter.
Well, it's both, I say. Like, it's globally, the semiconductor shortage is a temporary thing because of...
Okay, fair.
But as far as the American problem, domestically, we've been moving away from production for like 2 decades now.
Yeah.
True.
And Chase actually brought up earlier the just-in-time accounting practices. That's what all these car companies are doing. They don't keep any extra chips on their side that they need.
Nope.
Meanwhile, like Chinese practices, I think they're a lot more, shortages are more close in the memory of their past. So they actually had stockpiles anyway. Like, they didn't do that just-in-time thing like we did, or at least to the extent.
And even if they do, the two factories are down the road from each other.
Yeah.
So they can figure it out. We don't have that luxury.
Yeah, that's the main thing. The last number I saw was the U.S. makes less than 5% of the world's supply of semiconductor chips, whatnot.
Yeah, it's pretty weak.
There's no reason that should be the case.
That's way too low. Like, if we somehow got cut off from the outside supply, we would be screwed.
Well, labor
that's
laws,
some Ricky numbers.
These companies sell globally, so if their inputs are super high because Intel was paying their workers a ton, it's going to naturally make them less competitive. That happened with like magnesium. I think we try to protect magnesium miners, which is a noble idea. You don't want them domestically losing their jobs, but at the same time, all the outputs had to adjust somehow, either using inferior metals or raising the price, and it's just not a recipe for success.
Good old supply and demand capitalism. It's a shit show. It really is.
The thing is, the U.S. right now is still the leader in like the technological development of a lot of these things. Like the value addition is still happening in the United States, but we're rapidly losing that edge, especially in emerging technologies. And I'm specifically want to highlight artificial intelligence, which is the number one long-term national security threat to the United States, in my opinion. And the second one is green and energy and green technology. Both of those are going to be absolutely massive industries. And the Chinese government has no qualms about investing billions and billions and billions of dollars into those industries. They want to win those industries desperately because they know what it will do to their economy. And the U.S. used to be the country whose government would fund all of those emerging industries to make sure that we would win. And that's what I think is an understated part of this infrastructure plan that I wish Biden would talk about more, is that the investments in green energy aren't really about making us, compliant with the Paris Accord. That's a nice side effect. They're really about kicking China's ass. And we need to focus on that, and that should be the talking point. Unfortunately, Democrats couldn't sell their way out of a paper bag. So, this is what we have as bad talking points. But it's important. We need to do this stuff.
Yep.
Democrats couldn't sell Molly at a fucking fish concert. So,
wow,
Jesus,
it's
fucking true.
God damn.
We talk literally, it's like a trope on this fucking show that we talk about how bad every freaking tagline is that the Democrats use. Like, it's so bad. The optics are always terrible. They always highlight the wrong shit. Like, there are so many good things going on, and they're never willing to call a spade or sell things for what they are. Like, sell things based on what people care about. Like, call people out for when they're saying BS. Like, I just don't get it sometimes. And Biden's actually doing a better job than a lot of people. He's just naturally boring.
It's true.
Well, let's just throw like the example you put out there. Like, I think that there's different ways to kind of look at, let's say, for instance, green energy. If the Chinese make better solar panels than us, we could buy their solar panels. We could reverse engineer them. Like, there's a certain amount of advantage where, it's not like we're losing, in like, missile precision or something to them. Like, it's actually fine no matter who does it, as long as it gets done. Like, the fact that they're working on it's wonderful, and we should be doing it more as well. And I agree that we should be in the lead as we used to be. Things like AI, they have a bit of an advantage because there's not as much institutional resistance. Like, say, for instance, like telemedicine or medical AI. You have very wealthy interests in the United States that don't want that. They have human doctors that have jobs. You have insurance. You have this whole kind of setup that's actually going to put the brakes on certain types of innovation because it's bad. And as opposed to like truck drivers who can't really stop the automation of trucks, you have certain industries that are going to fight. I mean, even looking at, let's say, like manned fighters, like the Air Force has an officer corps that's built off of having manned fighters. It'd be more efficient to have unmanned fighters that don't have to have a human in the cockpit. They could do maneuvers that a human couldn't survive. You just don't need humans, but you still have this deep institutional, and because of democracy and because of just how we operate in an open society, you have these different factions that are able to kind of push for their own interests. In China, you're not going to have that. The government's going to say, we need AI to do this. It's going to be as efficient as possible. We're going to go balls to the wall for it, and it's going to be the best. That's a problem with things like AI because you really don't want to be number two in that race. So I think that really, it's too bad we don't have more people in the U.S. government, in the leadership level that, can successfully operate their own email and Twitter accounts, much less like understand technology. Because the Chinese, if you go to like their big cities or you go to like their officials, like these are people with like hard science degrees, like STEM degrees are running like major Chinese cities or operating their big institutions or levers of government. And we suffer for that, and we're going to suffer in the long run. And that's going to become more and more apparent in the next couple of decades.
Yeah,
just whatever you say just don't take away Top Gun from me. Like, we need more movies that like normalize homoeroticism amongst straight males.
Not only am I not taking away, I'm giving you Top Gun 2.
Yep.
Brought to you by AI technology.
Top Gun 2 is just a bunch of drone pilots in like a server room.
Right. They're remaking that movie Stealth from back in the day.
Instead of Tom Cruise, it's a couple of fat kids in lawn chairs.
They have two screens, and one of them is World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
If you have a second, play this video.
Sure. Just before I do that, let me get in some of these comments. So we have, again, Rotten Pizza saying that the average American, like themselves, considers infrastructure only in the physical sense. People who think in roads and bridges. So that goes to Mateo's point.
I think I should acknowledge that is
broad.
Probably true. Like I'm saying what I think, but most people probably only think of visibility.
Yeah, like back in the day, we called it the social safety net, and that's fine. I mean, like I said, I don't think it's less important because we don't, include it with like we really need bridges. Like it's not even like it's so bad that we should have just a standalone bridge thing. Like
10 years, it should be like clockwork.
Yeah, it's really bad, especially like in the Northeast. Like if you look at, I think I talked about it before. If you look at it county by county, you can't really make out which state is which till you get to like New York, and it's just the shape of New York is all bright red, like danger.
Yeah,
some places are so bad, and I don't know. It's just you're not going to convince Republicans and centrist Democrats of a lot of that stuff. I feel like.
Oh, you're right. Well, and to be fair, there are we desperately need. You're right. Physical infrastructure. Our needs cannot be understated. It's decrepit. When you look at like the DC area, the federal government used to commit to giving lots of money to improve like the DC metro, and DC, Maryland, and Virginia just gave up on waiting for money from the federal government and have tried to put their own money into it to string it along, because the federal government has been so unreliable in providing funding for it that it was like decrepit and unreliable for like a decade. So and that's in DC, like the nation's capital. So it's a bad sign. Things are bad.
We need another compromise of 1877. That's actually, it's a joke. It was a bad one. Now that I think of it. Yeah. It's basically what led to the South being allowed to be pieces of shit all over again. Like basically, it stopped Reconstruction.
Yeah. We need it the opposite way. We need Reconstruction.
Yeah. So that's why it was a joke.
Yeah.
I realized
I couldn't remember what that was, and I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, yikes.
I had to Google it just to make sure I even had the right reference. I just...
Not our actual position, everybody. But to the point that they brought up, I think this is something that we could talk about extensively. I don't know if we should. But if I was Biden, I would say I would go to Republicans and be like, if you can get me 10 votes to make this bipartisan, I'll take $1.1 trillion. But it has to be 10 Republicans to vote for it, or five in the Senate to get me to 55, and it has to pass. It can't be filibustered, and then 10 or 15 or so in the House. Or else I'm going to go through
to just like somehow make it sound like it's them who did it, like make them feel like, oh, look at this infrastructure bill we did, just like to get it.
This is the problem, is that you alluded to this before, but the Republicans just pretend. Republicans pretended to be responsible for the last COVID relief bill, and something like 40 or 50% of Republican voters believed that the last COVID relief bill was the result of Republicans, even though 100% of them voted against it.
And I think governors
how do you overcome that?
I think you have governors out there kind of like touting their success, which is based off something like, or not governors, Congress people, based off something that they voted against, or at least pretended to be against, at the very least.
Well, I got that amendment in there, and so I do say, sir, that you must give me credit.
We're bringing pork back,
I voted against it.
Actually, that might be what we need.
I just love
pork spending or whatever you want to call it.
It's true across the board. Like, it was true of the COVID relief. You've got people out there saying, look at Texas. Texas is doing so great. Their numbers are way down. It's like, well, yeah, because the federal government has vaccinated everybody. Texas didn't have anything to do with it.
Yep. I will say that on that front, though, Texas did do the rollout of the vaccines better than some other states. Yeah. The states were partly responsible for that. Texas got in it early, and it's been going pretty well. Now, some counties in Texas have been worse than other counties in Texas, but with that said, it's been pretty decent. So, not sure I'd give Abbott or Governor Abbott credit.
Texas has always been really good at moving fluids around, so it kind of makes sense.
True. Mateo, what is this video that you shared that you wanted me to put up on the thing? Is it?
Oh, we were joking about drone pilots, like the next action movie. It's basically that. It's so funny. It's this guy like in a cubicle. He's carrying coffee. He's like, "Whoa, buddy!" But it's like dramatic, like movie-esque. Like,
let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's break up the news a little bit with this thing. Hopefully, I can skip the ad quickly. And then we'll talk about some more serious stuff.
While we're waiting for the ad to play, you can get around that by changing your VPN to India, then signing up with Google when they think you're from India, and they charge you like it's like $1.
Just pay the $12 for YouTube Premium.
It's doing a PSA for all of our fans out there.
Not doing that.
I watch so much YouTube. I just have YouTube on like all day when I'm at work. I say at work, but I have it on in the background while I'm working like all day. I just love that they were woke enough to make sure to include like lots of good, racial diversity, gender diversity.
All right. Well, I think we covered infrastructure fairly well. Covered it pretty extensively too. I hope everybody enjoyed that little segment. We have a couple more things that we should talk about. Do we want to talk about the new discourse on Twitter that's still going on, and it's been 2 weeks? Do we want to talk about John Cena apologizing and Mark Ruffalo apologizing? Or do we want to do a little news of the weird?
That sounds kind of weird to me, but sure. What
John
you got?
Cena apologizing is kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, kind of. I don't know if I'd count it. Let's do John Cena, and then we'll do the random news of the weird clip. So, who knows about this? What happened? Did anybody want to do the recap?
Did he pretty much state the official stance of every single country other than like the Vatican and like maybe Chad? Taiwan's not a country?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
but
the
the reason
official
that he
state.
apologized, let's be real.
Why did he apologize?
No-
Oh, because
no,
he
he
said Taiwan's
apologi-
a country.
Yeah, he said that Taiwan is a country.
Yeah, he wants to operate. He wants to sell his products in there and everything.
There you
That's
go.
why. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I doubt he's like, oh, my morals. I betrayed my own sense of Chinese identity. Yeah, it's totally.
I'm
just
pretty
so
sure
can
he
sell.
just misspoke and didn't know any better, and he said that Taiwan
Probably.
was a country.
Oh, absolutely. That's how it first started. Because how many people, especially regular Americans, given what they see, with
Exactly.
what little news they do watch on like CNN or something, you're going to think Taiwan's its own country, especially now. So,
Now-
I mean, he didn't mean it as like a political stance. He wasn't taking.
China just gets super butthurt
Oh,
about
yeah.
this, to the point that
They'll threaten to kick
they
Nike
force
out.
international organizations to not call. They force every international organization to call it Chinese Taipei. They won't let them call it, anything close to a country or a state. It's,
Because of Winnie the Pooh. Anyways.
Okay, so just as kind of a funny thing, one of the reasons why they're kind of extra butthurt about it is that he actually speaks Mandarin. He studied it on his own.
I didn't
he
know that.
Yeah, he learned.
Oh,
he like
Wow.
got
Okay.
literally just had like a tutor, flashcards, the whole 9 yards, and just thought it'd be cool. So like he actually weirdly, if you consume a lot of Chinese media, if you're studying Chinese, we would be very, very quickly made aware of how omnipresent and insanely sensitive and butthurt they get over the whole Taiwan issue. Like there's no avoiding it. It's the kind of thing where they probably took it really personal, because he does, even like when he like had his recorded thing, he's got the normal gringo accent that a lot of, Americans that learn Chinese will have, but he's actually pretty decent. So he was able to explain himself, in a passable way. And I think just the fact that, they probably has heard him speak Chinese in the past and it came up, they probably just got really offended and they'd really just dropped the hammer on the corporate side. And, he wants to make money. So same thing with we were talking a minute ago, but I think you mentioned Mark Ruffalo, who apologized over his comments regarding Israel.
True.
And because he had mentioned that he thought that there was a genocide taking place and then backed off on that. Surprising, because he's kind of a big lib, but
I mean, he said it before too.
I don't know
Yeah,
I don't know that these two things are exactly comparable. Okay, let's do.
No, I'm with you, kind of.
No, I get you. But
Wait,
the
who's
reason
asking him to
behind it.
apologize? Wait, who's asking Ruffalo to apologize? Is it people saying you're a Nazi? Or
No,
you're
yeah,
an
no,
anti-Semite,
he
or
just
is
got
it
lit up
actually-
on Twitter, but it's
okay.
basically you've got a lot of fan base that you don't want to offend, and you have money that you're trying to not lose. So in both of their cases, now the Chinese are different, because long term they're going to get to the point where they're going to pressure companies, are going to get people we joke about canceled, but they're going to reach anywhere on the planet to go after journalists, any public figures that speak out against them. They are by design going to get to a point where they can pressure anyone, anywhere, who says anything negative about them. And this is just a problem that we have to face.
I do want to go ahead. Go ahead,
They're
Justin.
absolutely doing it. Just to be clear, there are 14 countries that recognize Taiwan, right? Guatemala being the largest by population.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, the list isn't exactly impressive, because it does include St. Kitts and Nevis, Palau, Tuvalu,
Vatican.
Nauru, and the Vatican. But, Honduras and Paraguay and Nicaragua, it's a lot of Latin America.
To be fair, Congress did sue Jimmy Carter over annulling our mutual defense treaty with Taiwan. So, I mean, we have something with them, but it's just...
Well, it's
actually, no, that's a different conversation. I
The
don't know. I'm
reality
sorry.
is that Taiwan is quasi-independent. They have a lot of their own systems in place. They have their own governance.
They're self-governing.
China just really hates the idea that it's not Chinese, to the point that when I flew into China, they literally don't even let Taiwanese people go through the normal line to have their passport checked. They have a separate line for Taiwanese residents, because they don't want them to feel like foreigners. They want it to be distinct. It's super, super, super weird. So, and the reason that I say that this isn't exactly the same as Mark Ruffalo is because John Cena basically just acknowledged reality and apologized for purely commercial reasons, whereas Mark Ruffalo said something that is complicated at a complicated moment and regretted it. And I don't think it was necessarily for commercial reasons so much as I don't think they're exactly comparable.
One was more grassroots, the other one was state-led, pretty much. And, one obviously speaks to the fans more than the other, or at least in democratic areas.
So here's my issue with this, and this is my understanding, so I could be wrong. I could be getting my facts incorrect here, so take it with a grain of salt, please. My understanding is that Mark Ruffalo has been on this "they're doing genocide" thing for a couple of years now.
Oh, that's good. That's hilarious then.
So
at least dating back to the fall. The specific tweets he apologized for were in the fall.
Oh,
it was in the fall, and I think that he's mentioned similar things in 2018 and called it the apartheid state and all this other stuff. And the timing of it is very similar to what's going on with John Cena and Fast and Furious, because Fast and Furious isn't made for America, people. It's made for the foreign market. Those movies do wonderful in Southeast Asia. Like it is insane how well the Fast and Furious franchise does internationally. Like they're camping movies to us, but these are like grand fucking like
that's grade
awesome,
A Americana.
Yeah, grade A Americana, great action movies. Like we're talking it dwarfs the amount of money they make stateside. Completely dwarfs it.
And China literally limits the number of foreign films allowed into the country each year. And if you piss them off, they will just straight up block them, which means a loss of millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Which is also why Disney didn't make the Sage or the in the Doctor Strange movie, didn't make that person Tibetan or Asian. They went with the white woman with Sweden, not Sweden, Tilda Swinton. Swinton, yeah. Right. So that's why they went with her. One, big name. Two, not going to piss off the people in Southeast Asia. So yeah, Swinton, thank you. So that was part of that. And with Mark Ruffalo, there's talks about making a solo Hulk movie to go into the new Marvel Cinematic Universe, the stage whatever we're in now, 50,852. So I think it's closer than people want to necessarily admit, but I do take Chase's point because people do believe that genocide has a very, very specific definition, and that requires the desire to completely wipe out a people, whereas with ethnic cleansing, it's completely remove them from an area. So I can see why people would actually believe that he had a change of heart.
Yeah. Well, and people on the okay. One thing we didn't acknowledge last week, and maybe we should have, is that people are using what Israel is doing to spread anti-Semitism. Like that is a thing that is happening. There are people who are basically saying, if you are Jewish, then you're a Zionist, you're aligned with Israel, and therefore screw you as a Jew. And anti-Semitism has been on the rise. You can see it all over the place online. It's pretty in your face a lot of the time. And I think it's important to recognize that Jewish people and Israel are not one and the same. And I think that Mark Ruffalo recognizing that is A-okay.
Sure.
Talking about whether or not Israel is committing genocide, I even last week I said I'm comfortable calling Israel, saying that Israel's imposing apartheid. I think that Universal Discourse went even further and said that it's genocide. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even call it genocide at this point. But I said the long-term policy of Israel seems to be that it's either going to be a permanent apartheid state or that it will inevitably lead to some version of genocide. But we have to be careful with language and not be hyperbolic. It's important to use the right words. And
I 100% agree.
I don't blame Mark Ruffalo necessarily for trying to be as accurate as he can. I don't think that what he believes and like his position is really changing. He's just trying to be very specific and very accurate and not inflammatory, which is important. I think it's okay. I think what John Cena did is just dumb and for money. But you know what? That's his right to do too.
Sure. And I should you made a good point that I want to circle back to a little bit, is that people are conflating Israel with Jews, but and this is not a hard but this is more like that's coming from everybody, supporters of Israel and detractors of Israel. I cannot tell you how many times I have had conservative people, evangelicals, Jewish people, doesn't matter, just conservatives in general, right, come up to me and say that Zionism is a part of the Jewish identity, and therefore, if you're against Zionism, you're against Jews. I've had this said to me directly by thousands of people when I'm in these debates.
There's a lot of, we do treat Jewish people almost as they aren't just people who follow a religion, so there is room to confuse it, but it's like I don't agree with it. I'm just saying, that I could see, there being inroads to that type of thinking that we kind of build ourselves.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that like not Jewish people say. Like if you know a lot of Jewish people, that's a minority position that you have.
I would say that's a minority position among liberal Jewish people. At least my experience online.
Yeah,
I think it's more of a conservative problem.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like in person, like
right.
Not because anecdotes are data, but like I know a lot of Jewish people in real life, and I would be shocked if any one of them had that viewpoint. Like it's just you online you'll find anything. I mean, online you think that like tankies are the left and they're like the Democratic Party. Like
what about Curious Joel?
So
there's a lot of them in Curious Joel who will they're Trump all the way over there. Like it's really weird. Yeah. But I think there's only one reason why though. It's because of the Jewish state thing. So that's why a lot of people. Well, actually, that's not why they tied in. A lot of them, like when someone says I'm a Jew, it's not the same way not we. I don't think some of us might be Christians, but a Westerner would say I'm a Christian. Right. There is a difference there, and I think we know it's there.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of where it's coming from. It's almost like it's not just like these people are just trying to like conflate them for no good reason. I think we give them that.
Yeah, Catholicism is not an ethnicity. I mean, that's
Jewish people are definitely an ethnicity. So you're 100% right about that.
Go ahead.
That's not necessarily. Even that is complicated.
Right. Yeah,
not necessarily.
That's what I'm saying is no. Like if you say I'm Catholic, there's no implication beyond being Catholic. That you're Catholic. Like you could be Chinese and Catholic. You could be from
I know atheists who call themselves Jewish.
That is also true of Judaism.
That's what I'm getting at, though. I hear a lot of atheists will be like, I'm a Jewish.
Yeah, but if you say that if you say that you're Jewish, there's also going to be some kind of, at least at some level, an implication that you are of some kind of original Middle Eastern stock of some kind. That's not always the case. It's often not the case, but there would be that kind of stereotypical perhaps sense of Jewish, quote unquote, I mean, not to get into like skull measuring or all this, but like
I get what you're saying.
Okay,
there is I don't know how to put this in a correct
We're also canceled.
We'll say there's a traditional idea of a Jewish ethnicity. I feel like in the United States anyway, we're pretty far removed from like that kind of thinking about Judaism. I know that is not the case in other parts of the world. There's also a lot of people in the United States who identify as culturally Jewish, and you hear people say this all the time. Like I would say I'm culturally Christian. Am I a practicing Christian? And that's kind of how like most of the Jewish people that I've ever met are. And so there are like all these different layers of what does or doesn't make somebody Jewish, but none of them have anything to do with support of Israel unless you ask fucking weirdos, which happens to be fucking weirdos on the right and left.
Yes, and several of the parties I would say that the conservative parties in Israel, like the far right ones in Israel,
absolutely,
will take those positions as well, which is my point.
Sorry,
but one second, which is my point though. Like I think that politics fucks this up a bit with it, and that if it does it enough where somebody says like, if I were to say I'm anti-Zionist, enough people are like, well, you're anti-Jewish. And I think that itself, and this was the point that I was getting at, I think that itself is anti-Semitic. I think if you're saying somebody
Big
has
time.
to be Zionist in order to be Jewish, or all Jewish people are Zionist, you're being anti-Semitic.
Kind of like
And
Rothschild
literally-
space lasers, huh? Speaking
So-
of though, but we're about, actually, I'll tell you guys later.
But what were you going to say, Mateo? Do you
Oh
remember?
no, it's just a Marjorie Taylor Greene link I posted in chats, but it's so irrelevant that I stopped myself. But it's
Oh, okay.
fucking
That's fair.
hilarious because she's insane. She made comments about Jewish people. Actually, you should play it. It's funny. It's a clip from the Colbert Report, so you know. It's
I don't want to
safe.
get canceled, so
Yeah,
It's making fun of her.
No, I
It's,
know.
it's making fun of her. Who would cancel you for that? It's a Colbert Report clip.
okay.
It's-
I will look at it later. I just don't know if I want to put that on the
Just
screen.
be very
given-
careful. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been on a roll lately, and there
She's
has
so
been
nuts.
some
It's
weird
so-
anti-Semitism from the right. And I mean, her latest tweet about like tracking vaccines is Nazism, and then the video came out where she said she wouldn't tear down a statue of Hitler. Like,
She's so.
I don't
bad
know
at
what's
anything.
going on there, but I don't blame Anthony for wanting to, take a step back.
She got into a beef
It's the
with,
Colbert Report, or
Yeah,
no,
well-
it's the Late Show or whatever he does now. Actually, now that I
Right.
think of it.
No, like Ben Shapiro and some other, other right wing, Jewish personalities on Twitter got into her about it, and she was like fighting back against him, and just like, like questioning their support of Israel. Like I don't know, it's so off the rails. It's almost sad that nobody figured this out sooner. That like to appeal to the modern Republican Party and to really take the reins of leadership, you just have to go as crazy as you can and just never apologize and never back down. And it sounds funny, but like, who are we talking about? Like, we're not talking about Mitch McConnell. We're not talking about Kevin McCarthy. Like, any of the people that in theory should be running the party, they're going to have to start like bending the knee to this sort of crazy, because it's just like with Trump. Like you get along with it to get along with it, but eventually you find yourself in its wake, and you're no longer the one that's directing the ship. You're now behind the ship. Like this is they're losing control of the party. The people who are willing to say what the people want to hear, and the people want to hear fucking crazy. So that's a real problem that we're nowhere near solving.
No, I think that's very much true. I don't have it, but there's the meme that you were kind of referencing there, where it's a Republican Party leading the Tea Party, and its Tea Party is a T-Rex, and then the T-Rex turns into gets bigger and then eats them. I think that's a perfect analogy for that. So I've seen it all over, but I don't have it handy. So, but yeah,
Neat.
I think we've talked about that pretty extensively. Sean, you didn't break in much with this topic. Is there anything you want to close out with?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of knowledge or opinions on that particular topic, to be honest.
No, that's completely
Probably
fair,
better
man.
off for it. Marjorie Taylor Greene is such a
I think in your analogy, Kirby is the Tea Party. And,
Yeah.
So I want to do our little news of the weird segment before it gets too late. So let me go ahead and throw that on the screen. Share screen, tab, and so this is coming out of Texas. And what we're seeing here is that a woman faces felony charges for forgetting to return Sabrina, the Teenage Witch VHS tape 20 years ago. So a woman in Texas received a nasty shock while trying to update her married name. She was a criminal for a crime she didn't even remember committing. In fact, she was guilty of a crime most people of a certain age have probably committed. 20 years ago, she forgot to return a VHS tape. Karen McBride, 52, made the discovery during the trip to the DMV. The former Oklahoma resident had moved to Texas and gotten married and needed to update her information. I went to change my driver's license during this COVID thing. You had to make an appointment. They told me that I had an issue in Oklahoma. McBride was mystified. She called the number that DMV had provided and was connected to the Cleveland County District Attorney's Office. During the conversation, McBride was floored to learn that she was a wanted felon. So, long story short, she didn't turn in a VHS tape when she was a long time ago with Blockbuster, and so now she is a felon. What does it say about society?
Wait, is she a felon? Did she actually get charged?
Was it
like
like,
that-
was it
if
like
she was found-
$1,000 in late
if she-
fees? Is
yeah.
that what it was?
There's
me-
more to this story than just whoops. Hey, we found this. Now you're a felony. I bet
Well,
you it's
I
like
think if it's
we've
over
made
1,000,
reasonable
it's
pains to
somehow a felony.
contact you for years, woman, and now you're in
Well,
trouble.
okay, let
Like,
me
there's
let me
interest
just read
you
the
pile on
rest
top of
the-
these things.
Let me just read the rest of the other show. In 1999, someone had rented a copy of Sabrina the Teenage Witch in McBride's name from an Oklahoma video store called a Movie Place. When no one returned the VHS tape, charges were filed. According to court documents, McBride was charged in 2000 for felony embezzlement of rented property. The charges stated that McBride did willfully, unlawfully, and feloniously embezzle a certain one video cassette tape, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, of the value of $58.59.
How is that a
McBride was
felony?
stunned. McBride was stunned. Not only did she not remember ever renting the VHS tape, but she didn't even like Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Oh, well,
I
I
have
mean, okay, now I
never watched
understand
that
why
show.
they're charging her.
Well, that's just for sympathy because none of us like Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
How dare you? How
I watched
dare
that
you?
show.
Merlin was the
go-
only star of that show, and I am not apologetic.
I was just thinking to myself, I wonder what Melissa Joan Hart is up to, because I mean that show was great. I mean the acting was terrible, and the stories were blah. But what a great show otherwise.
We need a Clarissa Explains It All reboot.
Clarissa Explains It All was the best
I'm going
Melissa
far
Joan
back.
Hart
Great
show by a
Real far
lot.
back now.
By a lot.
Who's the dude? Whenever you put the ladder up into her window, you'd hear like a whammy bar guitar sound.
Oh, what was his name?
There has to be parodies like galore of that shit.
Oh, there totally is.
Off
Let me get
topic.
through. Yeah, no, let me get through the rest of this thing. As she absorbed the shocking news, it dawned on her such a thing could have happened. In 1999, she had a roommate. I had lived with a young man. This was 20 years ago, McBride explained. He had two kids, daughters that were 8, 10, and 11. Oh, two kids, daughters that were 8, 10, or 11 years old. Okay. And I'm thinking he went and got it and didn't take it back or something. In fact, the more McBride thought about it, the more other parts of her life seemed to suddenly make sense. Since 1999, she had been fired from a handful of jobs. Her employers had never given her a reason. Now she thinks that her criminal background is why. When they ran my criminal background check, all they're seeing is those two words, felony embezzlement. Fortunately, it seems that McBride won't be a felon for much longer. The Cleveland County District Attorney's Office announced that they would dismiss the case against her.
Okay.
However, McBride will
Thank
still
Christ.
need legal intervention to have the felony charges cleared from her record.
That's messed up. That's like the worst part of it. It's like, I mean, she's probably gonna get it cleaned up in the long run, but at the same time, I wonder if this was like something where they actually did try to contact her, and she's like, whatever, I don't know what this is, or if she actually just honestly
She
never
might have just moved.
knew. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It could be that. If it's that, I feel so bad for her. Like, that's just horrible luck. Or
I'm
not
sorry,
even luck. It's just, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was done. I was just kind of rambling.
How's it embezzlement? Don't you have to work for a company and steal money from them?
I was trying to find the actual like legal code because it's such a tiny amount that I don't understand how it could be embezzlement, but like different laws are written differently. So what does it actually mean?
Yeah, I
in
mean,
Texas? I don't know.
Yeah, and in some states you just have these wacko laws on the books that are rarely enforced. But in theory, I don't know. I think someone said that the average American commits 5 felonies a day and doesn't know it.
I think if you place something in someone's trust, I think that's the line.
It's probably, if you think about it, it's probably one of those situations where there was a push by video rental places to make it a high crime so people would return more to the tapes because that's a money loss.
FBI warning.
It's like a big problem, like all over the country. Just that no one's returning the tapes. Like, fuck.
Well,
you.
at least in Oklahoma, anyways. So
My grandfather
maybe it
used
is,
to.
Without... Go on. I was just saying nothing.
Oh yeah, my grandfather used to pirate these like movies from Blockbuster. He just thought it was the funniest thing. Like he'd leave the FBI warning in there in the front. I was just like, I mean, really, like the FBI is going to come bust you over like a copy of Back to School or something or Top Gun. Like no, like it's ridiculous.
But does this give credence to the idea that we have too many laws that are stupid? Does it give credence that
This is probably a law that covers a lot of stuff that needs to be penalized. This is probably just the more absurd end of the spectrum. So I wouldn't say this is probably an outlier, I would say. I have a feeling there's a lot of theft of rental properties out there. Like rental things. Rental property sounds like housing, so just things.
Yeah,
so,
but while that might be true, like should have this been a felony? Like,
Yeah, wait, was it a
58
felony when it
bucks.
was just? Yeah, was it a felony
Yeah.
at first, and then it just because I could understand after a certain dollar amount, like if they keep tacking interest, then
It
sure,
said
maybe
that-
something pushes it. But if it was just $58 and they're like felony,
58 bucks felony. That's what the article said. That's what I'm
just
sticking
weird.
to.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's like if you steal like a rental bike or something, and the bike's like, I don't know, $100, and like they try and make that a felony. Like, why is it not just $100 fine or
Right.
or whatever? Like, that seems super misdemeanor to me. But
Way back in the day, Blockbuster had a stranglehold on the U.S. government.
isn't that funny? how now and that leads to, I fully believe, like unironically, that every single law passed should sunset in 50 years, and if you can't find a reason to like reinstate it, it should just go away.
That's how we lost
That's
the
actually not a bad
central
idea.
bank. I have nightmares about that.
But
Well, actually, no, I don't. I didn't live through that.
But
Fuck them.
okay. Two things. Number one, jurisprudence is like really useful in like building up a societal understanding of what law means and is. So I'm not sure about that. But also, like, we have prosecutorial, like, you know, they have discretion. So, like, in this case, the prosecutors just looked at it and were like, okay, fucking, yeah, duh, we'll just dismiss it. Like,
That's why I want to know,
whatever.
like what? Who looked at it at first? Like, was this just some hard ass guy? Like, yeah, don't rent movies if you can't return them, or was it? I just want to know if there is something more to it. Like maybe like they did contact her and she's like, "Suck it, guys," and then they reported. I don't know. It's just because it sounds so weird. I feel like to actually for someone to go through with that being a felony, it's just a tape. It's like. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, it's also really weird that she didn't know. I mean, how can somebody be charged with a felony and just never know? Like,
Yeah,
that
isn't there
indicates to me
something-
that, like, the state wasn't very interested in actually pursuing these charges. So, it could be one of those things where, like, somebody writes down... Like, there was one time where I got in a car accident, and the cop literally, on the first, like, sheet he filled out, charged me with, like, 6 things. I was at fault. So, like, charged me with literally, like, 6 things, like driving too fast for conditions, which made no sense to me. A nice, shiny day, but technically you could always be driving too fast for conditions, right? Like, driving too fast for conditions, failure to yield, distracted drive, like, literally 6 different charges. And then, like, 2 days later, it comes back to me and I get, like, 1 ticket, So, I think that maybe this is just one of those cases where something got a little bit lost in the system. She was never informed. It sucks. Like, that maybe this was showing up on background checks for her. You'd think you'd somehow find out somewhere along the way. Like, I feel like it would pop up eventually, but I don't know. I know that there are weird laws out there. Our criminal code is really complicated. I don't really know that this is a condemnation of our criminal code so much as, like, maybe we need to have some systems in place to make sure that there are just things lingering in the system for 5 ever that could be affecting people's lives.
I think to Art's point about the whole sunset clause, I'd be okay with that, but I'm against it for right now because nothing gets passed in Congress without 60 votes, and so every law would get sunset, and Republicans don't like laws, so there are laws they don't like, and so yeah, it would be an issue for that. So I'm against it. Fun trivia fact, since we talked about prosecutorial discretion, John Lennon actually created that. So I just dropped a link in all the chats. And you can look it up for yourself. He was about to be deported, and he convinced he and his lawyer convinced the prosecution to just not go for it. So go ahead and check it out. Fun little fact. So
The only good thing that John Lennon ever gave us.
What, you don't like Imagine? Come on now.
I just wanted to say something. I wanted to say the most inflammatory thing that I could think of, which was that.
Wow.
So we've been streaming for about an hour and 50 minutes now. We had a couple of topics that we didn't cover. Which one do you guys want to cover? What's the last topic? Somebody
Well, just
go for it.
because this is important, this is just so everyone knows, because it's just for the good of the world. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad reelected with 95% of the vote.
Wow.
God,
That's
Syria,
pretty good.
and Assad.
I thought that like most people had figured out that if you want it to look like a legitimate election, you make it like 60-40, but some people haven't gotten the memo yet, I guess.
Well, the real memo people need to get is not to say the words "Assad must go" because he's clearly not going anywhere.
He's like, I don't have a joke for that one, so never mind.
There are a lot of things that must happen that never will.
Facts. No, does anybody have a
miss that
story?
meme so much.
This is just more Assad not going.
No, it's not.
Because
We'll
it
be here
was so
forever.
Right.
It's like the Notre Dame, or not Notre Dame, the cathedral in France when that burned down. It's like it's Assad must go before.
Oh my
after,
God.
I got a good story that we should talk about that I actually didn't bring up, so I hope people are ready. We have two stories. We have the whole kink at Pride thing. I think that's been done to death, so I'm good to skip it. But
It's so boring, and it happens every year, and
what is
normal
it?
people
Yes.
who touch grass don't talk about it.
What?
Exactly.
Wait, what?
oh,
gosh.
there's some Twitter
Seems like-
discourse. There's some Twitter discourse about whether or not kinky people should be fully kinky at Pride because Pride is now a family event.
Oh,
or
well,
something.
I mean,
So, but do you want to talk about it? We can.
I mean,
but it's been
you
done.
sometimes see people straight up waving dicks around. It's like,
Yeah.
you're gonna find a lot of gay people who are just like not cool with that because that's just very weird. Almost in any microculture in America.
Okay, I think we can cover this in like a
We can
minute.
cover it in a minute. There you go. Yeah. Go for it, Jay.
Okay, here's the thing.
Boom.
There are a lot of people who are talking about kink at Pride who like have never been to Pride, and they're trying to paint Pride as like this sex fest, and are trying to paint it as like this horrible kinky shit that's going on in public. And by the way, gay people are pedophiles, and they shouldn't be allowed to get married, and I love wedding cakes. Like, there are people who are out there saying that. That's really not the reality. Yeah, there's some instances at some Pride events where people have their dicks out or are wearing, butt plug furry tails in public. That is definitely the
fairy tale
exception.
isn't the
And-
worst because I feel like that at least you can't tell. It's not like they're like
Oh, you can
bending
tell.
over. Oh, okay. All right, never mind.
Somebody's got a
Take that
little
back.
experience.
but that is the exception and not the rule. And
For sure.
there are
It's
also
definitely
some
the exception, but I
and
think
there
that's
are-
just the debate. Is like, should
well,
it be there?
I think that there are Pride events where that is not the exception, but those Pride events tend to be pretty explicit about what they are, and the context kind of matters. If you're showing your tits at Mardi Gras, nobody gives a shit. If you're naked at Beta Breakers, nobody gives a shit. The context matters. And if your Pride event is open to the public and communal, yeah, you probably shouldn't have a bunch of nudity or like really outward sexual things. And it is important for like youth to be able to go to those events because, it turns out that a lot of people experience sexuality in their youth. So, like, there are things to talk about in terms of like what's appropriate and what's not. But honestly, all the people arguing about it on Twitter aren't really solving anything. This is largely like a local, contextual, cultural thing that is not going to be solved by Twitter.
No, I think that's a very good point. And like I said, I don't want to do this. It's been done to death. So Hans Hakir, right? That's how you pronounce his.
Hans of Harkir.
Yeah, Hans of Hakir did a debate between some of the bigger Twitch people. He moderated it, I should say. So go ahead and just check that out. They did it more justice with more time than we could. I don't want to assume anything, but I'm pretty sure everybody on this panel is cishet. So yeah, so that's what that's where I'm at with that.
White
So
cishet, please.
Oh, white cishet. Yes, true. We're all white.
Thank you.
Yeah, white is self-explanatory. Cisgender meaning you identify as the gender as your same as you're associated with your assigned sex at birth. Het meaning heterosexual. Not true in my case, by the way.
Oh,
but
okay. Well, I'm sorry to
very-
have assumed, but
very straight passing, so I'll take it.
I am sorry. I should have asked instead of saying I assume.
Oh, we all
My
make
bad.
assumptions about each other all the time. That's part of
For
life.
sure. Yeah, no, I'm just putting out
I
there.
mean,
I apologize.
you're the one in
You
flannel with
fucked
the
up,
beard,
Anthony.
so.
You fucked up, man.
I am a lumberjack. I am clearly a lumberjack lesbian. So there you go. But I think that's we Chase. Great recap of that. Thank you for that. I think the final thing that we could talk about, and I think this is a big case, is Amazon buying MGM.
Yeah.
They suck at making movies, and they gave up.
Oh, they should release those what do you call it?
The tapes of Trump. The
tapes of
outtakes?
Trump.
Yeah.
I heard
That's what a
about
lot of
that.
people have said.
That would be such a moneymaker.
But MGM also
That's why
owns
Bezos
a ton
did
of
it.
TV shows too. So, but yeah, that's exactly why Bezos bought it. Sorry to talk over the joke. Bezos bought it to release the sex tape of Trump. So we're all going to see that P tape finally, guys.
No, I don't think it was
but
that.
yeah,
I think it was just outtakes of like The Apprentice or something, where he just like really embarrasses himself. Or is it this?
None of you should actually watch that video because nobody consented to its release. So shame on anybody that actually goes watches it. Anyways,
What?
but
Where are
I'm
we?
joking.
Where are we?
joking.
If Jeff Bezos owns it, then it's his consent that matters.
But I think this does play into the larger narrative that we've been talking about for several weeks now. This is an issue near and dear to Chase's heart, and it's near and dear to a lot of our hearts about monopoly power and Amazon. Oh, let's talk about it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you just want me to talk about how we shouldn't be allowing these fucking mergers again? How I say
Yes,
every week
do
how
it.
we shouldn't be allowing these fucking companies to just buy up other companies, eliminate jobs, and then say, well, prices aren't going up, so I guess it's okay because our antitrust legislation is out of date and we don't enforce it anyway. I feel like a broken record at this point. It's just
It's a
another
trope for us.
example.
We do
MGM
have a
just
good.
seems,
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I was gonna say
go for
MGM just seems kind of small. Like they
Yeah,
don't seem that important. Like they used to be this huge name. They did a lot of the biggest movies, whatever. But now it's kind of like they're almost not that relevant.
yeah. I wouldn't say this is any kind of monopoly thing. This is what Amazon was already doing. Now they just have talent. Like this is it is funny, but it's true because Amazon's known for doing everything in house. Like they're always trying to just develop everything on their own instead of just buying
Oh,
assets.
no, see,
This
that's
time-
where you're wrong. They don't
No.
develop anything on their own. They just buy up smaller companies. They bought up
Yeah.
Zappos.
Well-
They bought up the diaper company. They bought up Audible. They bought up Twitch. They bought
Okay,
just buy and
they
buy
buy
and
smaller
buy.
companies in scale. And what I'm saying is this was already to scale because they probably bought a ton of companies trying to make Amazon Video, but it just wasn't enough. They weren't getting any titles. They weren't making anything. So this is what they're doing now because
Well, it's easier to buy than develop things yourself, right? So if you're going to do it, Disney bought Marvel. Why not? It could.
well, yeah, it's
There
probably
you go.
just costly.
But,
But
and
that's
this
exactly
is a
why,
good.
though.
Yeah, this is a good point too because maybe it's me on YouTube said Amazon bought it for the collection. They'll double their investment in 5 years.
Yeah,
So
it's really
if
just for the
Amaz-
old stuff. I would say.
If Amazon takes those movies away from Netflix and has them on exclusively on Amazon Prime, then that might mean more people get out of Netflix and go to Amazon Prime for the wider selection of movies. And then there's also the issue of that MGM still makes all the Bond movies and owns all the Bond movies in partnership with the author's family. So there's some wrinkles in there, but there's that.
Thank God cutting the cord is so much cheaper.
Is it
Every
is it
app is
anymore?
like no, not at all. It's,
I know it's a
it's
joke,
like
right?
you get 3 apps and you're paying as much as you would have for like 500 channels. It's just
It is cheaper if you share it like everybody does. So there you go. I only pay for HBO Max. I get Hulu from my my wife's family, and we get Netflix from T-Mobile for free. So there you go. $15 a month. I have unlimited watching forever. There you go.
I
Don't have
just
Disney Plus though.
I understand that like vertical integration doesn't feel like it's feeding into monopolies, but it just is. Like MGM's a huge company. This is a huge acquisition. It's like what, $9 billion? But Amazon buying up this company is decreasing competition in that related marketplace. It's not like increasing competition magically somehow. It's just decreasing competition. And in fact, you say like, yeah, they're going to leverage that catalog and drive people away from Netflix or whoever, like that could end up being anti-competitive behavior in the long term. Like, I've been super critical of Apple for the same thing. Apple keeps buying up these small companies the second that they pose a threat to them. Facebook keeps buying up small companies even if they think they might be a threat 10 years down the road. And
Apple, yeah.
like I just don't like it. And Amazon, people like seem to think that it's different because they're like an omnibus company that has their hands in every single frickin' pie. But I'll say it again. I am about to live in a neighborhood where my choices for grocery stores are Whole Foods and Amazon Fresh, both of which are owned by Amazon. So anytime Amazon makes an acquisition, it feels icky to me because it's just like, great, another company that is now Amazon. If I wanted to cut Amazon out of my life, I'm literally not sure that I could unless I was willing to spend hundreds more dollars a week.
What did regulators say? Because usually they have some sort of say in whether or not something.
Oh, they absolutely
can go.
could.
Did they? I mean, did they say anything? Usually, there's some sort of requirement, or there's a review at least.
Well,
did
the
that
current
even go that far, or is this just all
the-
like?
I think it not because it's not considered horizontal integration because Amazon is not a video company. So
Yeah, well, this is the
I
problem
would
is that
say
our
they are.
current antitrust law is written
Trash.
such that what the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, can analyze is the potential increase of cost to consumers. So
Yep.
they're going to look at this and say, is there going to be an increase of cost to consumers? And Amazon can
Yeah, it's
say,
part of
well, no. In fact, it'll probably be a decreased cost because people are already paying for Amazon Prime, and now they're going to get all this shit for free.
Yep.
So when they look at that, it's hard for them to justify. Our antitrust law is just out of date. But we also just haven't enforced it at all. So Sprint and T-Mobile merged last year, the year before, which made us go from 4 big cell carriers to 3. And there's already been a ton of movement in terms of like pricing.
Yeah.
Things have gotten less competitive. Things are actively bad, but they were still able to justify the industry and say prices aren't going to go up. We're going to be able to do all this infrastructure investment, blah, blah, blah. It's just
Mhm.
never true. The consumer always loses when there is less competition. And it might not feel like we're losing, but in the long term, that's what's happening.
But isn't that the price thing then? They lose because they're paying more, right?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
and
that
in
be
the
what they have to look for, or is it
Well,
too late?
it's hard for them to analyze because how do you know that 10 years from now prices are going to be way higher as a result of Amazon acquiring MGM?
Yeah, true. There's so many variables.
It's our law is just not equipped to deal with this. It's just not. But yeah, we get free
Yeah.
2-day shipping, which is great.
I mean, hey, that's cheaper. But to Chase's point about everybody owning everything, I don't know. Can you guys see that?
I love
The
this
7
chart.
the 7 companies that own the world. So put Disney in there and Amazon now. So yeah, just to go towards the point again. And AT&T is
Those
starting
are
to
a
buy
lot
up
of cheap
companies too.
products in there.
Sure, I mean, sure,
I'm
there's a
just
lot of
sa-
cheap products in there, but that's the point. Like, do you only care about cost, or do you care about political power and the ability to manipulate the market?
But when it comes
And
to
that's
our
the
antitrust
argument.
laws, there are a lot more things than just price. I'm pretty sure. I don't think all those companies could just buy it up. Like, what's the whole analogy? If Coke owned the roads, they couldn't tell Pepsi not to go on them.
That's
that,
kind
right?
of not true, actually, because I mean, not exactly true, because like when AT&T bought HBO, right,
Exactly.
they were able to give all of their customers free access to HBO, but charge if you were streaming Netflix.
Yep.
As an example. So because
Well, that-
AT&T
they didn't-
owned the road, in their case, your cell phone, they were able to ensure that they had a competitive advantage when you were using the thing that they own versus something that they don't own.
Yeah.
And the same
It's a
thing is
complicated
happening with
process.
Amazon.
AT&T has competitors, though. They don't own the road. They compete with others. Like, by analogy...
Yes, but now it's 3. There's only 3 telecommunications companies, and
Not-
they're going to end up.
No, that's not
they're gonna,
the problem. That's not contradictory
it's
to what I'm
it's
saying.
it's oligopoly.
Oligopoly, yeah.
Yeah, oligopoly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like,
But in the case with something like AT&T, an oligopoly is completely permissible because the barriers to cost are so high. Like, you're going to have natural monopolies anyway. The way around that is you just regulate them more intensely, which we tend to do. Like, when it comes to like utility companies, there's a lot of government oversight in there and a lot of government involvement. I just don't think they're to the point, like, unless you're talking about like Amazon when it comes to just Amazon Web Services. Maybe these days it's changing a lot more, but like back in the day, Amazon like owned the cloud space. Like basically Home Depot, everyone who competed with them had to be customers of Amazon just to have some sort of web hosting. Well, it wasn't that bad. There was others, but Amazon was the bulk of it. And I don't think...
I just want to know, do you care about cartels? Like, if everybody carves up the map and says, I won't go into your territory and we'll all be good, that's not monopoly. That's oligopoly. I can't pronounce it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, just like
do you care about
auto
that?
industry
Like,
is oligopoly too.
Exactly. But do you care? Do you care about the fact that this is possible? These companies have so much political power that they can write the laws to their favor.
If they're divvying up territories, that's explicitly anti-competitive. So yeah, I would be against that. I mean, that's
but what about like
the heart of
lobbying and everything
anti-competition
else?
laws. Lobbying, yeah, lobby. Go ahead.
Okay.
I don't care about lobbyists. Yeah.
But I think
health
that's
food people lobby too. If you want to.
But I'm thinking, but I think Chase is more focused on, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chase. I don't want to speak for you. Chase is more focused on the political capital and power argument.
It's a little bit of everything.
Monopoly.
So when these companies become more integrated, they inherently need less people to do the same work, right? So you're decreasing jobs. You are making these companies less accountable to government because they tend to become more multinational, which means they can get away with doing a lot more things. Yeah, they tend to get a lot more political influence, yada, yada. But I really honestly just think that it ends up harming consumers, not even necessarily in just like direct cost ways that like we observe in like the price of goods, but like Apple having a huge amount of market power allows them to do all kinds of shit, like charge 30% to anyone who wants to do anything on their app store. And, basically brick their phones after a few years, so you have to go out and buy a new phone. And they get away with that. And AT&T has some competition, but I'm saying that they are using the people they're using the roads that they own, right, in this metaphor, to incentivize use of the other things that they own, which in my opinion is anti-competitive, and our government hasn't done anything about it, and they have limited capacity to do so under the current law. Is there some stuff they can do? Yes, but it's really hard for them to justify. And I go back to the T-Mobile and Sprint merger because this was literally decreasing market competition. It was going from 4 to 3. And they argued that they would, be able to better do infrastructure investment and whatever, but there were already only 4 companies. So going from 4 to 3 really changes the dynamics of what is required. And there really hasn't been solid evidence to show that that is going to result in massive infrastructure investment as a result of the creation of this merged company. But it is going to very likely have detrimental effects on customer choice and quality of access and service. I mean, look no further than every internet service provider who has a monopoly in a city. Like, when there's no competition, the service sucks. That's why everybody fucking hates Comcast forever.
That would be an example of like a natural monopoly, though, because the alternative...
It's not natural.
That's the problem.
It's
usually not natural.
It's called a natural monopoly.
No. The specifically cable companies are not natural monopolies because they've leveraged governments in order to make it where they can't have competitors move in.
Yeah.
As far as cable is concerned. So they literally divvied up the map and said that we won't move in on each other's territory.
A natural monopoly is when the government kind of lets you be an oligopoly or a monopoly.
No, a natural monopoly is like a hospital builds in a town and it can serve 2,000 people. The town only has 1,500. No other hospital can move in because it wouldn't make sense to scale.
You're being very denotative with the word natural.
I'm saying that's the economic term. That's the economic term.
A natural monopoly is a type of monopoly that occurs due to high fixed costs and a need to achieve extreme economies of scale, aka
yes, that's not
utility
the cable companies.
Yes, that's
not the
absolutely.
cable
Yeah,
companies.
well, so
Because-
like water and electricity are the best examples. Of
Yes.
Those are easier. Yeah,
Right.
but cable is too. I mean, how many cables you want running along or below your property?
There makes
comes
some
a point
amount of
where
sense.
It's absurd.
There's
and the costs
some
are way
amount of
too
sense to
high.
that. But the issue is that these companies have actually lobbied local governments to make it illegal for competitors to move in. So
that's
it's
the
not
government.
natural.
They should lobby the government to do everything they want them to do. The government shouldn't give it to them. Like you're like, we got to get rid of
see,
That's the
these guys.
thing.
that's exactly it. I want the government to fucking stop giving it to them,
I mean,
and they just keep giving it to them.
Welcome to pluralistic
Perfect.
federalism. I mean, it's not going to go all. Like,
But that's the thing. Like it's you both are making great points, and I think I actually have to end it here. So
actually, yeah, I do have
Chase-
to go.
Yeah.
Chase's
Oh my God.
outburst, great.
It's
great,
already
great wrap-up.
10:30. But
Yeah.
you're right. The government keeps giving it to them, and I want them to stop. That's why I keep shouting about it.
Yeah, like it comes down to we have to share a country with some careless people, like and some shitty ideas.
Perfectly stated. I again, everybody. Well, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight on this week's News Roundup. Chase, please go ahead and shout yourself out a little bit so that the people that might not know who you are get to know you a little bit and have your channel, and I'll drop the links in the chats.
Yeah, I'm Chase. You can follow me on Twitch at Chase W. Mitchell. I barely am streaming nowadays because I got a whole lot going on. You can follow me on Twitter, the same at Chase W. Mitchell.
Links have been dropped in the chats. Again, Chase, always glad to have you on the show. Very knowledgeable person, very entertaining. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time that you joined us, go ahead and smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out, gets it propagated all everywhere. Go ahead and share us too. And as always, keep your head up through the political storm.